Hello, friends, and welcome back to the Bikes or Death podcast. If this is your first time finding your way here, please note that you are bound to listen forever. It's part of the terms and conditions. So welcome along for the journey. Let's start off by thanking our newest patron, Chris M. Thank you so much for joining the patron family. It means a lot to have you, getting us a little bit closer to our goal of $500 a month on Patreon, at which time I'm going to release a patron-only podcast as a way to say thank you. If anybody else would like to help sustain the show, you can head over to my brand new website, bikesfordeath.com. There's several ways you can support the show. Through Patreon as a sustaining member. PayPal, you can give a one-time donation, and you can check out the web store while you're there. Been filling it with lots of cool merch, and I've got lots of goodies on the way. Volet straps. I just ordered Thai flask and titanium cups for your camping needs, people. Such goodies coming so soon to the Bikes or Death web store. So keep a lookout. If you want to stay up to date, Instagram's a way to kind of stay in tune with what we got going on, and as is the newsletter. At the website, you'll find a place to join the newsletter. Every month, a member of the newsletter will get a $25 gift card to the web store as a way to just entice y'all to be there. It's also a good way to stay up with things going on in Bikes for Death land. I don't send out very many emails. I don't have time. I'm busy. I don't have time to email you like all the time. So you don't have to worry about spam for me. Just usually about one a month going out, letting you know everything that's going on. Okay. Well, as I just alluded to, there is a brand new Bikes for Death website as of today. Hopefully, if everything goes according to plan, I'm recording this on Tuesday. The new website is going to go live Wednesday, as is this podcast. There may be a little bit of overlap in terms of the podcast is going to come out first thing in the morning. And then I think later on in the day, we're launching the website. So, but anyway, it should be coming. If everything goes according to plan, and if all the computer gremlins are feeling generous and don't delay our master plans, then we should be up and running, and you can go over there, check it out, and give us some feedback. I'm very, very, very excited about this. It's been a project that we've been working on in the background for several months now, and I'm really proud of how the website is being built. You know, throughout the course of Bikes for Death, since the very beginning, I've had generous people offer to donate time, talents in different ways. And this website is being built. I should say it was designed by my friend Catherine, who had donated some artwork previously. And then I was able to hire her to design the new website. And Alyssa was volunteering on the back end with some website management stuff, some techie stuff that I'm not very good at. And she is now building the website and helping me launch it. So it's been really cool to have people from the community come and support me in the very beginning. And then as I've grown a little bit here, I am just really stoked to be able to reinvest in those people who believed in me and were able to help out. So if you want to learn more about them and the little Bikes for Death team that we got going on, head over to the About page, and there's a little bio and a picture of everybody so you can kind of see the other people who are involved that, you just hear me. But as I've grown this thing and the demand continues to grow and the opportunities do as well, I need help. And I've been very fortunate to have some really solid people in the community step up and really make this happen. I couldn't do it without them. So just want to give a shout out to them and thank them for believing in me and offering to help from the very beginning, and continue to do so. So it's been a team effort. And what can I say? Go team. Head over to the Bikes for Death website. It's built by bike packers, designed by bike packers for bike packers. It's a great place to see all the episodes that we have, and we are adding to it now a blog section. And this is going to be an opportunity to share some different types of articles, videos, hopefully from the community. I get a lot of requests for interviews and ideas and topics and all kinds of cool stuff. And the truth is I want to do it all, but obviously limited by time. I can only do so much. And I would like the idea of opening up the blog to be a way for you to share your stories or what you've learned. And I think some things that are particularly interesting to me are, beginners getting into it, how-tos, how to do a route. Oh, geez, anything. I really like, mental health in the outdoors or drug abuse in the outdoors and how we use the outdoors as a positive thing in our life or whatever it may be. I mean, I think the topics can be really broad, but I think the most important thing is that I'm open to accepting articles or how-tos or videos from anybody. You don't have to have a big reputation. If you're a commuter that just took your first bike packing trip and want to share that story and how it went and the good and the bad and the ugly and the fun and the whatever. I think there's so much that we can learn from each other. And I love the idea of being able to put all that in one place so it can be a resource to everybody in the community and just another way to spread the stoke about bike packing and getting more people outdoors. So if you have an idea or if you have something that you're interested in submitting to Bikes for Death and have it potentially be featured on there, head over to the website. On the contact page, you'll see there's a little bubble thing. Fill out the little form. Let me know what you're thinking. And, my people will call your people kind of thing. All right. All right. Well, that's it, folks. Today's episode is brought to you by Kuat Bike Racks. That's the bike rack that I use. I'm an ambassador for them. I've used other bike racks and listen, there's a lot of great racks out there, right? A lot of great racks. But for me, I love the functionality. I love the way it looks. It's so well built and put together. And like I said in previous podcasts, they have the best customer service I think I've ever dealt with, or at least one of them. I mean, they just bend over backwards for their customers. So here's the thing. I mean, you pay a lot of money for a bike. You want to get it to where you're going safely, right? And the last thing you want to do is pick up a crappy bike rack at insert whatever department store name here. You want to get something that's going to actually protect your bike. And let me tell you, I just got back from a camping trip in the rocky terrain of hill country in Texas here. And if you saw on Instagram, I just kind of stretched out the legs on the old van, just put some new tires and suspension and wheels on there so it's a little bit more off-road capable. Well, I had my Kuat and my two bikes on the back all the whole time I was overlanding. So I have definitely put this thing through its paces. It has been all over the country and never had a problem. It works like a charm, always keeps my bikes protected. So remember Kuat, because you love your bike. All right, well, listen, today's guest needs little to no introduction in the bike world. Maybe in the bike packing world, though. Ted King, he was a professional road cyclist from 2006 to 2016. Then in 2016, he switched to gravel, and he was the winner of the DK200. I think it's now called Unbound Gravel. And then in 2018, he won again. In 2019, he was the winner of the SBT Gravel. And you may have heard that just this last month, or God, it hasn't even been a month. It's only been like a couple weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, he finished the Arkansa High Country Race with a new FKT. So previously, Rebecca Rush has been out there. Jay Petervary was out there. And we got this newbie, Ted King, who, yeah, he's a roadie. Yeah, he can do gravel for 200 miles. But we just learned that he can also push himself for 4 days, 20 hours, over 1,000 miles and 80,000 feet of climbing. I mean, just a truly, truly incredible performance. I hope that y'all got a chance to watch the dot. I know it's crazy, but man, I'll tell you what, that is some dang good dot watching. It was going in opposite directions, and you had Andrew and you had Ted vying for first place. And part of the Arkansa High Country is that you have to take selfies and check in and all this kind of stuff. So it kind of allows the watcher to be a little bit more engaged. So, but yeah, I had to obviously see if I could snag an interview from him. And he was very gracious with his time and his willingness to do so. You know, he hosts a podcast too. He already did this on his podcast, so he could have just been like, it's all right, kid. I got this. But yeah, I appreciate you coming on, Ted. It was a great chat, and what can I say? Welcome to bike packing. Looking forward to see what you do in the future, my friend. All right, and as always, Miles Arbor is going to take it away with the Bikes or Death theme song.
You load up your bike, you ride away from home. You could be with your friends or you could be alone. You ride for a day or maybe more. You just love being in the great outdoors. Everything you need is strapped to your bars and clear disputing that new pillow you got from Santa Claus. And then you think, oh shit, to yourself. You left that super lightweight tent on the living room shelf. Bikes. Oh, death. Bikes. Oh, death. Podcast.
All right, everybody. Well, my guest today doesn't really need much of an introduction. Mr. Ted King is joining us on the interwebs, just coming fresh off an FKT at the Arkansa High Country Race. So first off, dude, thanks for coming on and congratulations. Let's give a little internet cheers here.
Cheers, virtual cheers.
Yeah, congrats.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me. Pleasure to be here.
So, man, the Arkansa High Country kicked off on the 31st. It only took you 4 days and 20 hours. And so how long have you been off the Arkansa High Country now, and how are you feeling?
I finished on a Thursday. Today is Thursday. So it's been 2 weeks. I could really zero in. It's been 2 weeks and about 14 hours if I'm looking at this clock, and that's correct. I finished sometime around 3 a.m. It's nice to be finished. It's a funny mix of, I could definitely have gone slower and dished out the pain onto myself at a lesser rate. But there's a certain point in an event like that, you just want to finish. You know, I did it in sub 5 days. The immediate aftermath, I drove out there in our van, and we have an external shower, and they have nice safe parking there in the top level of the, downtown Fayetteville parking garage, whatever the heck. I literally thought I was going to finish the race, high five Chuck Campbell, the race promoter, and then take a quick shower out of the back of the van, take a nap, and hit the road. In reality, I was absolutely destroyed. I got a hotel at the host hotel conveniently right there. Spent the night, woke up Thursday a couple hours later, and I talked to my wife, who's at home with our 8-month-old, which is not an easy job for almost 2 weeks straight.
Yeah.
I was like, I can't move. Like, literally moving is hard. I don't feel safe behind the wheel. And so, I spent another night at the hotel. I spent another night in Fayetteville. It was nice to decompress a little bit more. I didn't touch my bike for a week, which is, that's effectively an off season for me. The everything from the waist down was pretty destroyed. So, just purely your legs have done a couple 100,000 revolutions. I had a bit of tendonitis in my ankle and my knee, and those have gone away. The residual thing, most notably, most certainly, most definitively, are weakness and tingling in my hands, a little bit my feet, more so my hands. Yeah, so this tape that you see in my hands, I just came from a PT appointment as I'm trying to get all this jazz diagnosed.
Was your physical therapist like, what the hell did you do to yourself?
It's really nice to have a medical team and have folks in your corner who have a background in athletics, especially in cycling. So they're appreciative and understanding of the ridiculousness, but are also like, that was kind of dumb.
Have you ever felt like this after one of your other events? So, I mean, for people who don't know, you were a professional road cyclist for 10 years. Then you got into gravel, 2016, I think, and you've won DK 200 a couple of times. So you're no stranger to big efforts on a bike, long distances, all that kind of stuff. But anything close to this?
No, there's certain slivers of similarities. Earlier this summer, I did one single 300-mile ride. It was across the state of Vermont. It was 90% gravel. It was a 21-hour effort, all said and done. And I mean, that was like that's certainly the biggest ride I've ever done by distance, contiguously. And most definitely the longest ride by time. I was tired the next day, and I was sort of fatigued for the week. My legs were tired, yada, yada, yada. But I mean, I guess almost in proportion to Arkansa High Country. And so with Arkansa High Country nowhere even on my radar at that time, I was like, yeah, man, I'm destroyed. That was so hard. And then it's almost like a different level of hurt and soreness and fatigue that comes from professional bike racing on the road. I mean, you basically live in a chronic state of fatigue. You're trying to get the most performance out of yourself. So you're always on the verge of sickness because you're training so hard and trying to rest as much as you can. But that therein lies the balance. Yeah. At the end of a grand tour, you're just destroyed, but there was something totally new and different to me about this in this nonstop effort. Yeah. Traditional road racing is race for a set period of set distance on any given day. on any given consecutive days, but then you're going to stop. And then you have a whole team of people, be it massage therapists and soigneurs who are catering to you, who are serving you food, who are massaging you. And this was a whole different ball of wax.
Yeah, I mean, talking about the medical team, I mean, you get off the bike and, I've never been a professional cyclist, but you got a team there that's going to put the calories back in, that's going to massage you, do whatever they need to do to get the most out of you for the next day. So this is just you going out, on the high country. It's just, it's up to you. How bad do you want to suffer? How much do you want to deplete yourself? Can you recover from it? Or I mean, it's just you. There's no team. Obviously, you come to it with a lot of experience, which is kind of interesting. And I want to kind of get into that later about how that translates into this event. But before we get into that, what put bikepacking on your radar? And then specifically, why the Arkansa High Country as your first event?
So it was basically a year and a half ago. That was my first foray into bikepacking. I did an event called the James Bay Descent, which went down the western coast of the James Bay up in northern Canada in mid-February. So that's the heart of winter, northern Canada, like high exposure, high risk. The two things I was worried about are polar bears and negative 40-degree temperatures. And as a rookie, thankfully, I had a very experienced team with me. There were 3 other friends of mine who were very experienced in this sort of high exposure, high risk activity. The previous winter, where it all caught my interest and radar, was the same 3 did a self-supported hike across the Algonquin Park, which is Ontario's oldest provincial park. And I think they were out there for, it's more than 2 weeks. I think it was about 2 weeks, maybe even close to 3. So basically a grand tour of this crazy hike. And then they wrapped that up. I was aware of them doing it. They wrapped that up and they said, hey, we're going to do something similar next year on fat bikes. And I'm just like, cool, I can do that. Like, let's go fat biking. The reality sunk in of what it all entailed. I mean, yeah, there's polar bears who are eating food and trying to bulk up that time of year, right. Going out on the ice and eating fish and whatever the heck, penguins. Are there penguins up there? Or is that the South Pole?
I failed that class in high school.
The quick aside is, thankfully, after the first day, that's when we were off the water. And that's when the risk of polar bears was gone. But then we still had the risk of the negative 40s nonstop. I survived that. It was really cool. It was fun to come to the end of that. And I don't know. I mean, just have my eyes open to bikepacking. I thought I was going to end up doing a lot more over the subsequent 18 months that brings us up to the present. And I just didn't. I've had the equipment. It is a different animal. Our family has grown. We had our first child coming on 9 months ago. So it just hasn't happened, but it's still definitely been an allure. And then, let's see. I mean, obviously, without question, everybody's 2020 has been a atypical year. So normally I'm zipping off to races, but this year it's been both parenting and, figuring out ways to occupy my time, which it's very easy to occupy your time when you're a first-time parent. I knew Rebecca Rush. So the two sort of linchpin items, Rebecca Rush had done the route basically a year and change ago, and she set the FKT. And just being friends and acquainted with her adventures, I knew she had done it. Then sometime, I don't remember exactly when, a couple months ago, Bobby Wintle, owner of District Bicycles out in Stillwater, Oklahoma, he posted that he was doing it, and aware of it's happening and that he's doing it. And we had just gotten a van and the ability to get out there safely. I was like, dude, that looks really cool. Bobby, what do you know about this? Tell me everything you know. Let's do it. I picked Rebecca Rush's brain. And then it was soon thereafter that I committed to going to the Arkansa High Country.
How much research did you do about the route yourself? I mean, did you really get into it and have a really good awareness of what you were getting into before you signed up?
Yeah, as best I could. I mean, I'm a pretty analytical fellow. So it was interesting I talked to basically the 3 people. Bobby Wintle a ton, Rebecca Rush, and Jay Petervary. And, Jay had the single person FKT. He still did until I happened to take it. I love the community. I mean, people are so willing and apt and ready to share and help out. And so I picked his brain. It's a bit of a different experience doing it in the heat of the summer versus the cold of the fall.
Yeah, Jay did it in June this year. Yeah.
Yeah. So, he had humidity to deal with, heat. He got to pack super light, and he had the benefit of a lot more daylight. But, the heat of Arkansas in that time of year, it can be brutal.
I don't know how that equals out. I don't know if it was, well, I do know when you wrote it, it was, you would have cold, So you get to the top of the mountain, you'd be sweating from climbing a mountain, then you'd, immediately start descending and you get cold again. And you got to like figure that out. And like you said, you had to carry more stuff, but he had to deal with the heat. I mean, it is what it is. The course is there, and that's how FKTs, go down. It's like the course is there, go have at it, So I guess it is what it is. But it is cool that this community, and you're not the first to note on that, is really open and welcoming. And yeah, let's go out there and ride bikes and let the best person win. And obviously it was you.
If somebody called me up tomorrow and said, like, give me all your tips, I'd do it in a heartbeat, Like,
right.
I can already think of ways that I could outdo my own time. And I didn't set out with the intention of setting the FKT. So yeah, to actually hinge back to that original question, I did a lot of research. I did, talking to those folks or doing the beta, which I'd never had to do before. I mean, looking at the distances, and they drove home that point, the race promoter and race director, Chuck Campbell, like, you don't want to be up a creek, literally and figuratively, and find out that you roll into a town and the one convenience store that you're banking on to have a meal that says they close at 5, maybe they close at 3 because it was a quiet day and they just decided to close the doors early. So I did try to really figure out those sort of details, like how far could I shoot for in any given day? Where do I think I'm going to be sleeping? Where do I think I'm going to be refueling? And that sort of truly the basic necessities.
Yeah. My next question was actually if you were going after the FKT. You say no. So what was your plan, your goal, your strategy going into it?
I would say realism was on my side. So it was to finish safely. I mean, look, we had 7 out of 20 finishers,
Yeah.
And last year, I think it was a similar ratio. So I didn't want to bite off more than I could chew. The irony being this enormous loop is like, you can be 500 miles away from the start and then say, oh, shoot, like I'm done. I need to ride home. Not only do I have to figure out how to get back to my car, but then they're just high level logistics. My goal was to ride the fastest 1,000 miles I could and enjoy it and be safe and, hopefully tell a good story. I brought a GoPro along and, we're piecing together a video now. And yeah, I don't know. I didn't want to go in guns a-blazing saying, hey, I'm going to set a course record. Like, yeah, right. Not my jam.
So how did you train for it? I mean, obviously you have different training blocks that you've done for different events. How did you train for this one? How did that transfer over?
Loosely. You hit on it earlier. I raced 10 years on the road and I retired from professional road racing at the end of 2015. And then since then, I've been part of the gravel community in races up to 200 miles long. In this gravel side of my career, I still don't train. Like I ride my bike with a sense and awareness of, what might I be lacking? Maybe I haven't done some threshold efforts or I haven't done some VO2s in a very long time. Be like, oh man, I haven't dug deep in 2 months. Maybe it's time to go dig deep today. Just basic understanding of the macro. Like, what am I missing? What am I doing well at? Whatever. Maybe it's time for a rest. And then fast forward to the current, having the high country on my radar. It's just sort of unfathomable, even post facto, to train for it. My wife and I got a van this summer, and that was amazing. And the purpose of that was to introduce our daughter Hazel to her family, her maternal side of the family is all in Seattle. And so we had a great, safe, fun trip coast to coast. And that was a blast. But, for 2 months, it sort of stuck a dagger in any sort of fitness that I may have had previously. It was ride whenever you could for as long as you could. But, that meant like a half hour here or an hour and a half there. And we got back from that mid-September. And it was like, all right, time to sort of buckle down. So in my mind, I'm like, I need to do long rides to get ready for the high country. And the longest ride I did was, I think, 10 hours, which is a fraction of one day in the high country. So I think I probably did 5 long rides. And by long, I mean anywhere from 6 to 10 hours. I did a couple 6s. I did 1 8 and I did a 10-hour ride. And every time, I've talked about this before, it's strange you parcel out the energy and effort you have for that period of time. So even if it was like a 3-hour ride, you come home pretty smoked after a 3-hour ride. You can go about your day, but like you've left it all out there to a degree. No different than a 10-hour ride. Like you put it all out there and then you come home and you're like, all right, I'm smoked. It's flipping the switch in your mind that's kind of frightening because you're like, well, shoot, I need to do that 10-hour ride again.
Yeah, that's a potty break and then, grabbing some Cheetos and then you're back on the bike for 10 more hours.
Exactly. It's just a total mental reset. So a message, I don't think it was ever explicitly said, but it's understood, I think, in the bikepacking community is you're going sort of the fastest slow you can. Go the most consistent pace you can because you're going to ride so darn long. Like, given the opportunity to get off your bike and walk up something steep, do it. Given the opportunity to sprint through a green light, don't do it.
Those are good little examples. How about, what was your like fueling and your sleep strategy? I mean, I think consistency, shortening, minimizing your time off the bike. What was your like plan going in to kind of manage all that stuff?
It's a hard one to put an exact answer on. My months in advance. Months. I mean, I think I probably had the plan to do it for maybe 2 months. So call it 2 months in advance. I'm like, I looked at the previous record and I saw that they're doing about 200 miles a day, give or take, because, right then it was around 5 days. And I thought, okay, that's a lot of riding, but I can do 200 miles a day. It's going to take 15 hours, maybe 18 hours, which leaves a lot of time to rest and sleep. And then the closer I got to the event and starting to pack my bike and ride it around and realize just how slow the bikes go. And then especially fast forward to the event itself where you realize how steep and how extraordinarily slow you're going to go. It made me realize that it's an event that's really going to benefit those who put an enormous amount of time on the bike and very, very little time off the bike. So I didn't have any strategy like ride X number of hours and rest Y hours. There were a couple days that I picked a particular spot that I wanted to stop. And actually, I had a plan for every single day, and then I was glad that I pulled the plug on some of them. But like for the first day, for example, was make it to the town of Whit Springs. That was 240 miles. So that meant riding from 7:30 in the morning till, I forget, 1 in the morning. And then I rested. And then my inexperience tells me that, okay, I'm supposed to not rest very long. And I see somebody chasing me on the track leader. So maybe this person's going to pass me if I sleep for too long. So let's just sleep for like 3 hours. And so I fairly arbitrarily set an alarm and set an alarm, got up and rode the next day. And I think that was probably my tactic as much as anything. Like, pay attention to the track leader, see how close it is. What is the risk of somebody passing me overnight? How long do I think I can sleep safely? So I slept as long as 6 hours and as short as an hour and a half.
Did you kind of make an agreement with yourself? I mean, there's no way, like you said, that really anyone can train for these events. I mean, the experience comes from doing them, putting yourself in them, and then through years and whatnot of doing them. Obviously, you cracked the nut on your first go, so what the hell am I talking about? But did you kind of allow for yourself to have like a more of a loose race strategy than you would obviously typically have, where it's a 10-hour race and you're going to be very dialed in, or a 6-hour race or whatever it is? I mean, did you kind of allow for wiggle room to just like, all right, Ted, I don't know what I can do. Going to go out there, going to push it, going to do my best, and just let the chips fall where they may.
Yeah. And I'd almost argue that the same philosophy happens in any race. So even if it is a 6-hour race or 10-hour race, so call it, I don't know, like DK is down to about race formerly known as Dirty Kansas is about 10 hours. And the way you described it was kind of perfect because like you lay it all out there and the chips are going to fall where they may. Like, you're queuing up off of your competitors, I think, a bit more as you're riding directly next to them as opposed to following on a track leader.
Yeah.
I think without the expectation and without any set explicit goal and saying, I need to do this, I need to win the race, I need to set an FKT, I need to finish. An event like this is just so much more about the adventure that allowed it to be much more loose. But then in the spirit of doing this crazy bike packing thing, it was like, all right, let's see how ridiculously sleep deprived I can be. And so by the end, I was, it's not running on fumes because fumes aren't sleep, but I was certainly running on sleep fumes.
A popular question that everybody likes to know is, did you have any hallucinations? What were the impacts of the sleep deprivation? Because, I mean, I don't know how familiar you are with, all the athletes in the bikepacking realm, but I mean, yeah, seeing things that aren't necessarily there is can be a common thing, and then you got to manage that safely, So yeah, any weird stuff going on?
Not to the extent of like listening. I've listened to a lot of podcasts. That was another element of my research. Nothing zany, and to a degree, I almost wish I took shrooms so that I could say that I had some hallucinations. No, Rebecca Rush had told me, once you start making really poor navigational decisions, like that's a point at which you need to sleep. And I was aware of that. And I think that probably kept me focused enough. And so there were a couple times late in the night that I was like hardly staying awake, pedaling my bike. I got to get off. And again, to go back to how freaking punchy this course was, I got off my bike certainly dozens of times, which is something that I have never gotten off my bike to go up a hill in training in years. And all of a sudden I'm doing it just dozens and dozens of times, maybe hundreds of times. Point being, it's late in the night. I'm getting off my bike to walk up another hill, and then you find yourself standing over your bike, and then you find yourself dozing off, and you're like, dude, wake up. You cannot fall asleep standing up on your bike. There are a couple of those that you say, all right, now it's time to get a rest. So, so much so, even down to the wire, I slept, I think, 2 15-minute naps in the final 4 hours, where, you think of the grand scheme of things, 4 hours is nothing. So, like, why can't you just push through? Well, you can't, because your body's revolting and you need to take those naps.
Your body said no. You found the limit. Let's talk about your decision to go clockwise versus counterclockwise. And I mean, you mentioned, following the dot. One dynamic that I like about that is it makes it harder to be like, okay, I guess in this race, it was Andrew was really pushing you for competing. So it was a little bit more straightforward, so maybe it didn't apply as much. But I like that idea in general, where it's a little bit harder to discern who your competitor is. So it kind of just forces you to be in your own little bubble and push as hard as you can. But what was your decision? And for anyone who doesn't know, actually, we should just mention that the Arkansa High Country, the racer has the option to race counterclockwise or clockwise, and you go. So what led to your decision to go? Let's see, I'm even trying to remember. You went counterclockwise.
I went clockwise.
Okay, sorry, I got to, yeah.
As you do that in this reverse screen, you're correct. I went that way. Flip a coin, sort of. Again, Bobby Wintle was my go-to person to ask any sort of, especially equipment question. What bivvy do we do? What do we do here? How do I do lights, etc.? When it came to directions, I figured at some point it's going to be easy and at some point it's going to be hard, but it's a net even total amount of ascending or descending if you go clockwise or counterclockwise. So whatever. And then, looking a little bit more at it, I go back to this, Alvin. You have this, you're looking at a computer screen and there's a 4-inch window where you see the profile. And so I see that, it's like a lot of up and downs early, and then there's a couple big spikes toward the end. And I know that the highest point in Arkansas is 2,500 feet or something. So it's not like we're going over the Continental Divide. How hard can it be? I'm going to ride so that I do the harder part later, only to discover that the harder part later is an enormous, enormous kick to the teeth. I've joked about this before that I ran into Andrew at the relative halfway point, which was really cool. And, we stop and chat for a while, and he'd already done the course. And so he's very familiar with what he's going into. I am very unfamiliar with what I'm going into. He had alluded to the fact that it's going to be a little bit hard. And then it was later that day that I saw an Instagram post put on by the race itself where it said, very cool. Ted and Andrew are basically in a dead heat. Who is the harder course ahead of them? Hint, it's Ted. And that just it blew my mind, because I thought back to my day one, and there's so many super short, punchy climbs that you're going like max effort. As I've already said, you're trying to limit your max effort, but you're going as hard as you freaking can up these really short climbs, and it's just incessant. Dozens, certainly, again, maybe hundreds of these little climbs that are just, they're a minute long or 3 minutes long, and they're brutal. Whereas I think, as I look at that, go back to that profile in my mind, okay, this is going to be like an easy long climb that hits that tall point later in the ride. The punchline delivered to me is that those really long climbs are a series of those short, steep climbs with even shorter descents. We could hit what amounted to a 30-mile climb later in the race. Climb for 2 minutes, descend for 30 seconds, climb for 3 minutes, descend for 30 seconds. And it was ridiculously hard.
So I haven't ridden the whole course, but I've ridden some of it with actually Chuck Campbell and Brandon Pack. They brought me in February and kind of gave me a little preview, and we did a portion of the route.
What'd you think of it?
It's freaking hard, but I was going to ask you, I mean, I'm just a regular cyclist, but I'd love to get your take as a professional cyclist. How hard is it? Like, what were your thoughts on the difficulty of, take, the tired out of it and all that kind of stuff. But I mean, like, it's a booger of a route, I think.
It's exceptionally hard. It's exceptionally hard under the best conditions. And we had great conditions. So that's not what I was alluding to. I can't imagine doing it in bad weather.
Well, so what makes it hard for people listening?
Okay, we're going to nerd out on numbers for just a minute.
Yes, please.
But not at a super high level. So I consider a hilly ride 1,000 feet of climbing per 10 miles of distance covered. Okay. And so this was 80,000 feet of climbing over 1,000 miles, which works out to 800 feet of climbing per 10 miles. So it's less than what I would consider a high amount of climbing. 800 feet is still a lot. So I'm not discounting it at all, but I'm like,
But if you just look at the numbers on paper, you're thinking,
Yeah.
okay, I this is in my wheelhouse.
certainly within my wheelhouse. I'm going to have a weighed down bike, and you're going to have the cumulative effect of day after day after day. Really big take home point is when it's flat. And then when it's climby, it's way more than 800 feet per 10 miles climbing. So, you might be doubling that. You might be doing 1,600 or 2,000 feet of climbing per 10 miles. So the climbing is incessant. I'm not sure if there's ever a perfect time of year, but the time of year that we did it, there were a lot of downed leaves. It makes picking a line a guessing game. I relied on really durable tires. I had great Rene Harris tires in their Endurance Plus casing. So I had a great deal of trust going through these, not rock gardens, but I suppose it's a gravelly rock garden.
Yeah, I mean, some of the roads are very rough. I mean, some of them are good, some are paved, some of them are just nasty.
Just rough, right? I mean, the whole thing wears on you. There's not a lot of sections that you can relax. There's not a lot of sections that you can zone out. Like I was hoping and initially thinking of when I was talking to you about it a second ago, like, okay, maybe we have a 5-mile climb at a 2% grade, and that'll take you up to some like 2,500 foot vista. Okay, well, with the exception of that's what you get on a paved route magazine, it's just short, steep, hard, punchy, really taxing, rough gravel, which is awesome. It's just so hard.
Yeah, it's hard. It's very I think, people think about Arkansas, they're not thinking mountains. You say, okay, 2,500 feet is the highest point. Okay. You look at the elevation profile over 1,000 miles and you're like, okay. But then to actually put wheels on it, it shocked me. I was like, I did not bring enough gears. There's some crazy gearing on the ride that we went on. Yeah, I didn't do the whole route, but it seems like you're either going flat down by a river or you're climbing straight up or going straight down. It seems like those are the only options.
A funny story in the race was the beginning of day 2 when I looked at my brake pads and I'm like, oh man, I've already burnt through my rear brake pads. And that's a little bit scary when you're thinking, okay, I have 4 days to go. And so at that point, I'm already like triangulating which bike shop I'm going to visit and am I going to get there in time? And no, I'm not. So I have to call them up and figure out how to do that. And with the funny story being, I went in with full set of front brakes and a portion of better than half width rear brakes. But in my mind, it's like, well, why waste energy using your brakes on a descent? I'm a handy bike handler. Like, of course I'm not going to use my brakes, but as I keep alluding to, these are really short, steep climbs, and that means really abrupt, steep descents. And they're sinuous, and they're loose gravel, and they're off camber, and they're going into a river. And so you're hard on your brakes. It's a super challenging course.
Brandon Pack almost watched me fly off the side of one of those mountains, coming down one way too fast, and took a nice little quick turn. And I mean, the thing is, like, I was only out there on a 3-day trip, but if you're at, the end of, you're at mile 800 and you're coming down one of these things and you're sleep deprived, and they actually did have a guy die. I don't think it was on it was on the route. I don't think it was doing part of the race, but a guy did fly off the mountain and they found him in a tree. Having brakes is good. Yeah, it's a tough course. So I'm happy to hear you say that. It makes me feel a little bit better about my own efforts on it, because I was just like, Jesus. I'm from Texas, man. So like we don't have the nearest mountain range close to me is 9 hours away.
Yeah.
Like it's just a whole different ball game for me. But
I never discounted is not the word. I knew I had received enough warnings of how hard the course was.
Sure.
I was aware that, more than anything, people are like, dude, those Ozarks, they're real. And way back in the day, I could hinge back on this experience. I raced the Tour of Missouri, and that was 2009, I think. And that was a road race, and that was super hard and hilly. And I did Joe Martin's stage race, and that was quite hard and hilly. And I was part of last year's, basically the exact same time, when they rolled out the big sugar gravel event. And
oh, yeah.
That was brutal in that just the number of flat tires we had in our group of a dozen. It's like, okay, well, there's super sharp gravel there. So,
man, I got invited to that initial ride and I wasn't able to make it. But
yeah. Well, did you remember? I don't know if you remember the weather. You didn't miss much. It was a deluge.
Oh, I do remember.
Yeah.
Yeah. Shout out to Gabby, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Great folks up there in the NWA.
Oh, yeah. If you're a cyclist, you have to love what the community is doing, how obviously the Walden Foundation is like kicked in millions and millions of dollars. And I mean, and the community is embracing cycling. They're seeing the economic benefits, the health benefits. I mean, the real estate is gone. I actually, I've bought some land up there. So yeah, I mean,
it is incredible. I mean,
yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah. Like where else are we going to see that kind of influx of capital? It's just not going to happen. I mean, even if you have like the 100th wealthiest person in the world, surely they don't love bikes. And it's incredible what they're doing. It's incredible the benefit that's happening. It's fun to go to downtown Bentonville and see the cycling utopia. I mean, like cars drive behind you patiently and they're just accustomed to bikes. It does feel a bit like Truman Show going through that town, but yeah, it's an incredible amount of infrastructure and resources, and the bike riding is spectacular.
Well, to my understanding, the Walton Foundation has teamed up with People for Bikes. They've started a program where they want to use Bentonville, Fayetteville, the whole Northwest Arkansas as a blueprint. And they're looking to extend funds to other cities, other communities, bring them a project, and they're looking to extend it. So yeah, I couldn't say enough good things about what they're doing just for the cycling community. But we came here to talk about you. So anyway, let's talk about you and your thoughts on Andrew. So for anyone who didn't watch the Dots, and you should have been, it was an epic race put on by you and Andrew. Do you know how to pronounce his last name?
I struggle with it. Onermann. Onermann. Did I spell that right?
That sounds about right. Yeah. Sorry, Andrew, but I did see on his Instagram where, he's a local.
Was it approximately a 12-minute post?
Yes.
Oh, yeah. A lot of people have seen that. Yeah, we should tell the listener, if you haven't seen it, it's on Andrew's Instagram page. It's a live video, which presumably has been archived because I watched it after a 24-hour period. He first hit my radar, literally and figuratively, when it was sometime in day 2, and it was nice and fun. I was getting texts from my mom, and she was texting. I'm on a text thread with my mom and my brother. And as much as you really need to concentrate throughout the event, your phone is a good place to go let your mind wander elsewhere. So it's cool to have this text thread coming through. And at that point, I was only paying attention to Ezra, who's on my tail, chasing me in the clockwise direction. I wasn't yet paying attention to anybody going counterclockwise for no particular reason, except, that's just the way one's mind works in traditional bike racing. You see who's chasing you. And probably 2/3 or more did it clockwise, and a third went counterclockwise. So it's a smaller pool in the first place. Andrew, having ridden the course before, is probably the most experienced, coincidentally or ironically. But yeah, it was sometime in day 2, and my mom said, "Hey, Andrew, this guy Andrew going the opposite direction, he's about tied with you." And I don't think he slept all night. And it didn't put my mind in hyperdrive, but he was on my radar then, and I was paying attention. And I'm thinking like, oh shoot, like this is a serious bike packer, and the level of commitment, which involves the level of sleep, which is low, is what he's pouring in there. And who knows what he's going to have later. Like, due to my inexperience, I don't know if my body's just going to like shut down after 2 days or 3 days, or what happens when, it's had a total of 4 hours of sleep after 2 days. So what he did was ridiculous. I mean, sort of animalistic. And seeing him at the halfway point, he was chipper and excited and in a really good mood. And I'm like, yeah, shoot, like I thought I was going hard, and here's this guy who's going toe to toe with me, and like, gosh, like, what does he know that I don't?
That's one of the things that I really, really love about bikepacking ultra endurance sports, is that it's kind of an equalizer where, it's kind of cool. I mean, the narrative, you got the local who, doesn't have a big name in cycling. You've probably never heard of him, never, read anything. I don't even know if there's anything to read about him, but and then you got a pro cyclist with very limited bikepacking experience coming in and be like, nobody knows what's going to happen. But he certainly knew you. Andrew knew who you were. He went out there with the intention to win. Like you said, he's already completed the route. He's got that under his belt.
He's from Fayetteville, which certainly is an advantage. So even if he hadn't ridden the route, he knows the area.
He's used to riding in those conditions, all that kind of stuff. But I just wanted to give him a shout out because, he just poured everything into it. Not to say you didn't, but it's just such a cool event where you can see a guy with a regular job or whatever that just trains his ass off And then you have, are you still are you a professional cyclist? What is your official?
If I talk to anybody in the industry, I say I'm a professional bike rider. My goal is to put more people on bikes and get people excited about bike riding. It's a far cry from professional bike racing that I once did. If I talk to somebody completely outside of the sport of cycling, then I do say professional cyclist because it's just simpler. But yes, right. I draw in all of my income from the sport of cycling.
So Andrew, again, pushed himself. Hats off to him. He tapped out, I think, around mile 700 something. Completely gutted, and y'all should go watch the video. It's one of the most honest. I mean, you tell he just finished a race. He's emotional, and it's good to see. I mean, that's what it takes, I mean, that was a real nice look into what does it take to. Yeah, you can watch a dot, and you can see him at halfway mark, and he might be pretending to be energetic, but he's gutting himself to get there. So when he tapped out, I've always found like it's easier to keep yourself motivated when somebody's chasing you and all that kind of stuff. Was there any shift in your own mental state or your own like drive when he tapped out? I
mean, I'll preface the answer by saying I wish he stayed in.
Yeah,
and complete 100% due respect, and I mean, basically I say I have 100% respect to anybody who toes the line at the start line.
True.
Because it's such a commitment to get even there. And maybe I say that answer because once he was gone, it's almost like my motivation started to wane. Like there were times later that all of a sudden it was a light bulb moment. I understand why people quit races in the lead late in a race. I keep going back to, I remember hearing a story of somebody who is leading a 100-mile running ultra marathon, and they quit at mile 93. So you have 7% of the event left. Like, why can't you just walk it? And it was coming down to those, basically a similar place, having less than 100 miles to go, and being like, this is so freaking hard. Like, all I want to do is quit.
So what was the thing that kept you from quitting? That's a question I like to ask. I mean, everybody has the option to either quit or keep going. And it's easy to find excuses. That's the thing. I mean, I think only 39% of the field finished this year. And like you said, That's not uncommon. It's a hard race. So nobody's going to give you shit if you tap. So you have to find your own internal, motivation. So what did you tap into to keep from quitting?
I don't want to pull on too many heartstrings, but probably my family and knowing that, they're at home and my wife watching Hazel. It's like we've done a great job at this point co-parenting and being, together with each other for Hazel, and knowing that I'm at this event voluntarily. Like, I signed up for this. There is no, unlike a former lifetime, there's no team that's relying on me. There's no prize money. There's no press. There's no, not press. There's no,
there's not global press.
There's not. I was blown away with the press that I got. And moreover, the messages I got through the event and afterwards from all over the world, like I got messages the most from Germany and from Netherlands and Paris, France, and people like, I've been watching all throughout the week. I mean, it was, maybe that was a motivation as much as anything.
Yeah.
I mean, especially in the lead, like, I joked that if Laura drove her car by me towards the finish, I might've been like, all right, I'm getting in the car. That was hard.
You alluded to it earlier, but that's one of the things that I do like about bike packing is that once you leave your car, your hotel with all your stuff on your bike and you get out there, I mean, you either call somebody to come pick you up, which is never fun, or you just get your ass back to where you got to go. You're just in it. You don't have a lot of choices.
Yeah, big time. That was my other answer is especially, you're going to start questioning yourself around the times that no one's going to pick you up. Like when it's 3 a.m., people are sleeping.
Yeah, that's a good point. At what point did you realize that the FKT was an option? Scotty and Ernie Lechuga had the couples FKT, which is 4 days, 22 hours. You got it down to 4 days, 20 hours. I mean, how much were you aware of, and when did you decide that you were going to make a go at it, or at all, if you were even thinking about it?
I think my third day was exceptionally hard. And that was when I was going into those long extended climbs and had sections that I was pushing my bike for 30 to 60 minutes at a time, just really long, brutal stuff. And again, taking the glimpse at the profile, I thought that I had wrapped that up on that, what ended up being my penultimate day. And then I get into the final day and I have 215 miles to go. And I slept in. I got a hotel that night. It was awesome. I woke up early and so well fed and well rested and well fueled. And I thought I had 215 miles to go, which I thought were going to be a relative cakewalk because I didn't realize just how challenging it was. The reality was it was insanely hard. So by my math, I was almost going to finish at like late in the day, 8 p.m. on Wednesday. And then the reality is I finished almost 7 hours later. So I wasn't hinging success on it. But at that point, I thought I had it in the bag, the FKT, which was a wonderful fringe benefit. And then it started to get down to the wire. And I'm like, oh, geez, like I'm taking these 15 minutes naps instead of a 4-hour full night of sleep because, yeah, at that point I did want to chase it down. So yeah, I guess the long story short is I thought it was safe and I was going to smash it out of the park waking up that final day. And then the reality was far from that. So, yeah, I mean, they put in a heroic effort in the time they have too.
So did you actually, in my notes, I put heroic effort, for your first event. Yeah, you have obviously a great history in cycling and competitive cycling. But actually, I mean, it was one of my questions. At what point did all of your training and experience fall off? I mean, having never done this, I mean, when did all of your training and your experience and all that just go out the window and you just had to find out how tough you were?
I mean, maybe as early as the first night.
Yeah.
I think I ended up sleeping about maybe 2 hours. So waking up that day and going about the day. Actually, no, I take that back because, yeah, I was sleep deprived. And then I had like these massive, I don't even know what to call them, like these, my eyes were gaunt, but then they were puffing out below that. I mean, like I looked like trash. And then fast forward to what ended up being my third night. That's where I slept for an hour in I think they call them a holler. On the side of the road. I mean, that was beautiful. It was cold and perfect. And I made my 3 cheese macaroni and cheese and then woke up just absolutely freezing after a couple hours, whatever it was. And I mean, yeah, you're just, at that point, you are in a survivalist mode. And I'm not trying to be hyperbolic because it's not, I don't know.
Like we said, you could call and someone could come get you, but That's not what you signed up to do. You signed up to get your stuff, everything to the finish line. And so, yeah, I think liking it to a sense of survival. I mean, I think that's one of the things that is appealing about this is that as human beings, we are not pushed as we used to, evolutionarily. We're used to being way more capable, but now we have air conditioning houses and cars. And so I think there's some kind of appeal of putting yourself in these like very difficult situations and really like gritting through it. I don't know if that's true or not, but I think about that sometimes.
Yeah, completely. I mean, it is, at the end of the day, the whole thing is a self-challenge. So, it was fun to be finished and then be following the other racers. And we had, in the brief time that we spent together, socially distanced, whether it's rolling out from the start line or whatever, like, I empathize with them. I feel for them. I'm sending them messages. I'm excited to follow them. And, just knowing that they're going through the same things. So, I mean, hinging back to your question, it's almost like I couldn't really rely on my other experience in the sport outside of hard-headedness, and hard work is going to be, what pays off, any more than soccer is a completely different sport than hockey. Like you're trying to get this unit into a net. But so on one hand, they're identical. And on the other hand, they're totally different sports. And these are totally different sports. World Tour racing versus bike packing.
Great analogy.
Thanks. I just made that up.
Yeah, that was actually a good one. Do you think that we'll see others? So we've seen Lachlan come over and do some endurance. You've done some. Do you think we'll see other pro riders tackle some of these events? I'm wondering if it's a way to like, I see it as, like I said, an equalizer on some extent. So maybe as you're older, later on in your career, it could be a way to like still be competitive, still, stay active in cycling. I don't know if you had any thoughts on that.
I've wondered it myself. I mean, I guess I make the closer comparison to gravel, right? There's a lot of pro cyclists who are dabbling in gravel as their careers slow down or pivot or shift or whatever the heck. And gravel is just simpler. It's more tangible. It's something you can do because that's a closer sport comparison, as opposed to it's just this seismic shift to think of what bike packing is, because you have to be so self-reliant. And so we've seen, and not just the pro cyclists who are coming to gravel, we just see gravel as this gravitization. There are people coming to gravel from all walks of life, whether they ride a bike or not. There is also a gravitization, magnetization to bike packing, but it's going to happen on a considerably smaller scale, is my estimate, just because of those leaps that you have to take.
Yeah.
You have to be comfortable camping. You have to be comfortable with the expenses that are incurred because you need to buy bags and all sorts of new equipment. So I think we're going to see folks coming over, whether they're professional cyclists or not, more and more of them, just to a lesser degree than you're going to see elsewhere.
Yeah.
I mean, will we see more pro cyclists? Definite maybe.
Definite maybe. Yeah, that's a fair answer. I think it's inevitable. As I've just been a fan of the sport, I felt like we were going to start seeing some of that, and really curious to see how that experience and is going to translate. And in your case, it translated pretty well. And I think you hit the nail on the head. I think ultra endurance comes down to stubbornness, and you find out really how stubborn you are. Everybody's going to be hurting. Everybody's going to be having problems, but can you get through it? Can you sleep less? Can you suffer more? Can you be stubborner than the person next to you? And it's really like a test of will in a lot of ways.
100%. Couldn't agree more.
Last question, most important. Any future bikepacking in your future, maybe namely the Tour Divide? Maybe you want to go out there and smash another record. Anything else on your radar?
Conveniently, listening to the podcasts that I have heard up to this point, I understand that your body is really only capable of doing one of these a year. I mean, I'd be more comfortable if I had more sensation and strength in my hands than I do right now. It is coming back, and that is reassuring, but goodness gracious, I wish it was quicker. Yeah, at the end of, I say this often, apologies if you've heard this, at the end of Dirty Kansas, my first year, it basically took an entire year for me to be like, yeah, that was fun. I want to come back. That was cool. I dig it. Because up until that point, that year in the interim, I was like, that was awful. That was so hard. That was ridiculous. I don't ever want to do that again. I did my cross Vermont ride, that 21-hour, 310-mile adventure. That took about a week, a handful of days to be like, yeah, I guess I could do that again. That was miserable in the final 100 miles, but I'll do it again. And then with Arkansas, I finished, and I was so empty and so dead and so brutally beat up. And immediately I was like, that was cool. I want to do more of that.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Immediately. Wow. What was it that stuck with you in that way?
I mean, maybe it is the fact that you can only do one of these a year. I don't know. I mean, I just liked how different it was. It was something totally new for me. You have to be so holistic. You have to be aware of your mechanical prowess and your mechanical abilities as much as your health, as much as your sleep, as much as your nutrition, as much as your packing, as much as your planning, as much as, all these things came together that you really don't have in any other event. That doesn't happen in gravel. Like gravel is you start at a start line and you race with everybody else to the finish line. It certainly doesn't happen in World Tour racing where you have all the support of that team aforementioned an hour ago. So yeah, probably just the newness of it was really cool to me.
I've heard before from other people who are successful in something that it's fun to kind of be new at something and to challenge yourself again in a new way. And not to say you're not being challenged in other ways, but yeah, just something completely new that you're like, you can really sink your teeth into or use whatever analogy you want to use, but makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah. That hits it on the head for me.
Put you on the spot. Is there an event that you would like to do bikepacking wise that other than the Arkansas High Country?
Someone asked me in the fairly immediate aftermath, he's like, hey, Ted, can you send me a list of all the events? And I'm like, I don't know. I literally told him, this was an Instagram direct message. I don't know. As soon as you find it, why don't you tell me? And maybe this is a shout out and call out to anybody to do that for me. I don't even know where to start.
Yeah.
I can list a handful of events that I know exist, but I know there's dozens more.
Right.
So yeah, Tour Divide is something that is interesting to me. And by comparison, like Arkansas is a sprint compared to that,
right,
just by pure distance.
Yeah.
Going to the Atlas Peaks, that would be kind of cool down in Morocco.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's still so new to me that I'm not ready to commit to anything.
Fair enough.
Let alone you can't get to Canada right now. So how do you even start Tour Divide?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, they're talking about maybe just starting at the USA border in 2021. I've heard rumors of that, depending on what happens with the virus and everything. But anyway, let's not end on a virus.
No, sir.
Let's end on congratulations again, FKT on the Arkansas High Country, your first ever bikepacking race, and you smashed it. How long do you think that FKT is going to hold up?
Certainly not forever. I mean, there were so many times late in particular days that I was like, oh my gosh, I'm creeping right now. Like, I wish I were going harder. How long will it last? The year is 2020. I bet it's gone by 2022.
All right.
And now that's a challenge. Somebody who wants to take it is going to go take it.
I think,
year.
I mean, as soon as you went out there and laid an FKT, I mean, as soon as you do that, people are immediately chomping at the bit to go. It's just the way we are. So that's part of the fun, right?
Perfect.
But you're the man right now. Congrats again. Thanks for taking some time and sharing your experience with our audience. And good luck to you in the future, my friend.
My distinct pleasure. I appreciate you taking the time. Excellent questions. Thanks very much for doing it. And thanks for listeners for listening.
And if people want to tune into your podcast, what's that called and where can they find that?
That is called King of the Ride. You can see me promoting the heck out of it on all things I Am Ted King. That is my social media. But yeah, King of the Ride on all the Spotifys and iTunes and all those things. So yeah, please check it out.
Very good. Thank you, my friend. Have a good one.
All right. Have a great night.
All right. Mr. Ted King, everybody. What can I say, Ted? Thanks again for coming on the podcast and welcome to Ultra Endurance Bikepacking. It's great to have you here. You are obviously a great steward of the sport. He's just a nice guy, right? He's a family man, super nice guy. He's also a freaking assassin on a bicycle. So who can't love and respect that? All right. Well, so for next week, I've already got it in the can. My interview with Kate Boyle, who is also off of an FKT on the Kokopelli Trail. For anyone who doesn't know, her, Kurt Refsnyder, and Leo Wilcox all went out there early November and all were trying to put down a fast time and see if they could knock down the FKTs that were established. Kurt and Kate both set new FKTs. So yeah, we got to chat with Kate about her FKT. So a lot of racy going on. We got Ted FKT and Kate FKT, but that's great. I love it all. I love the racing. I get so excited by it. I'm so impressed by it. God, it scares me, man. Some of these people are, the things that you have to do to win an Arkansa High Country. I don't know, man. That's like another level. So I have mad respect for these people. It's so much fun to talk to them and pick their brains and get to share those stories with you. All right, everybody. Well, I hope that you will stay safe this holiday season. Thanksgiving will be coming up here in a couple days, and I wish you and your family the best. Obviously, a crazy time of year, crazy time in our lives. We'll always remember 2020. It'll go down in the history books, I have no doubt. But take care of yourselves. Love each other. Find reasons to be thankful. And don't forget to go ride your damn bike.
You load up your bike, you ride away from home. You could be with your friends or you could be alone. You ride for a day or maybe more. You just love being in the great outdoors. Everything you need is strapped to your bars, including that new pillow you got from Santa Claus. And then you think, oh shit, to yourself. You left that super lightweight tent on the living room shelf. Bikes.